couple of things here before we get started. We were originally slotted about a week ago, still for a 20-minute slot. We got bumped to an hour, so we promise not to be offended if you get up and leave after 20 minutes. So this is our talk, kind of a couple things here to start off the conversation. Early stories for us when we started a penetration testing company, things we never thought we would have to deal with. So some funny stories, hopefully you relate. So I think the first thing you should know is we own no rights to any of the images you're about to see. So
a couple we do.
Yeah, right. If you if we happen to use your image and you're upset about that, you can have half of all the money Josh made. Giving this talk. Yeah. Okay. So who are we? Just a couple of years ago, we'll introduce ourselves here. A couple of years ago, this was us. This was actually Josh. DEF CON about 5 years ago. And I'm actually, by day, I teach kind of offensive security, network-based security stuff at Dakota State, and then I work as a consultant penetration testing company. I work as a penetration tester for a company in the Midwest, and then the early stories we're going to talk about here today come from my experiences when I owned my own penetration testing business.
Yeah, so this is actually a picture from DEF CON 16. That was our first year we came to DEF CON, and it was, we showed up at 10 o'clock on Friday morning thinking it was going to take 2 minutes to get our badge. And that didn't work, so they said, we'll come back later today. The new shipment's coming in at 3. So at 2:45 we got in line, and they said, well, you were only about 1,500 people short from getting the next shipment. If you remember the electronic badges, they would come in like shipments of 24, I think.
That's great.
So Saturday morning, be damned, we were gonna sit, like we got to the Riv first thing and sat by a trash can with 2 students from the University of Vermont. And it's so like the running joke is like 4 dudes by a trash can, because people would be like, are you guys really in line? 'Cause it was like 7:30. Like, yeah, we're getting a badge. We're leaving tomorrow. We're getting a badge. So that's kind of our background.
So that was us 4 years ago. This is us today. Actually, this is Josh today.
That's real. That's real facial hair.
All right, so we don't really dress like that in South Dakota, but I had to work this picture in because it's a great picture of Josh. So, so honestly, even if you think our talk is, full of shit, at least you'll get a kick out of our pictures. So, hopefully you enjoy. All right, so want to start this conversation out with, this overall question, right? So you want to be a pen tester, right? Well, so did we. So kind of getting back to the story here, talk a little bit about the business of pen testing and some of the surprises that we ran into along the way when we were kind of going through some of this stuff. We started out, if you read the description, pretty naive, pretty much a couple of lamers trying to make a difference in the world. So I actually started a penetration testing company, and then connected with Josh as the company grew to do the offensive web side of things for me. I couldn't handle everything at once. So it seemed like a pretty good fit at the time, right? It seemed like we were doing some pretty fun stuff. So you want to
Yep, and of course it changes, but these are pictures. You guys probably recognize some of these guys. Jared DeMott on the left there, and then Moxie and Joe Grand. They actually came out to South Dakota. So there's 2 things you need to know about these pictures. The first one is it's April, but for some reason the steakhouse that we're eating at has a Christmas tree in the background. Not really sure why, even though Moxie's like, dude, this is weird, there's a Christmas tree.
It runs full year.
Oh, it runs full year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, oh, that's even weirder. And then those guys are getting ready to chow down on some Rocky Mountain oysters. So and that's Joe actually taking a picture of it and sending it to his wife. He's like, I don't think she's gonna believe what I'm about to eat. So I think if you don't know what Rocky Mountain oysters are,
you can Google it.
It's a Google away.
Delicacies.
I think actually Jared's eating chicken gizzards, but that's not as cool as.
Yeah, well, if you come to South Dakota, we'll feed you right. All right. So anyway, we wanted to be penetration testers, and so we did it. We started this with this company, right? And we actually very quickly realized that something was extremely wrong. Something didn't quite add up, right? And we were a little shocked at all the stuff we didn't know about not only the business, about running the business and all kind of the funny things that go with that. So that was the inspiration for this particular talk. So,
yeah, so I mean, I think all of us, especially with a technical background, spend your time becoming more technical and learning the latest tools and how to do things, and then you're blindsided by all this, I don't know, BS that you have to deal with, which you guys that have real jobs, I mean, I'm a professor too, so all you guys that have real jobs deal with all the stuff we're about to talk to, even if you're not a pen tester, but if you're a developer or a project manager. If you're a project manager, you're making a lot of this stuff, but... Oh, and then one other thing, this lovely, lovely assistant that we have. I'm not sure if anyone's ever had like a Vanna White or like a ring card girl in their talk, but we have one of our students, Mike, is going to help us out today. So hopefully you get a kick out of Mike here in a little bit.
So Mike.
Mike, that's your cue. Woo!
This is issue number 1.
I mean, if you go to DEF CON most years, there's no girls, right? I mean, there's tons of hookers or girls here this year. You know, I mean, Mike was like the sexiest thing I could come up with. I didn't know all these girls were going to be here this year, so.
So back to the talk, right? We first thing we thought was basically we would start this penetration testing company and run a couple of tools and make millions of dollars and quit our jobs as professors. It turns out that, you know, chicks don't think that that's very cool. You know, they don't really get that. All right, that'd be good. That's good to know. See, my wife would disagree. So
my wife thinks I'm bowling right now.
Yeah. So lots and lots of kind of things that we thought were pretty obvious weren't obvious to us to begin with.
It's going to get better. He's promised it's going to get more sassy as we go.
Okay, so like everything, any type of business that you run, this goes across the board. It boils down to money with the business. We learned that very quickly, right? We didn't realize at first that so much of running a business was a money thing. We had a little passion and really wanted to do something and thought that was really all that it took. You know, we thought we were going to get a couple of clients and we were going to, you know, work for a few months pen testing a client and then, you know, cash these fat checks. Turns out we actually had bills to pay, so that didn't really work.
Yeah, so another thing is like you know, obviously there's tons of good open tools. Open tools are very, very, very cheap tools. But something that we found out was even like something as simple as buying a $200 burp suite license for all the web stuff that we do. I mean, that becomes like, really? And, you know, somebody's going to ask you like, $200? You need $200? I'm like, good Lord, it's $200 for like the tool for the year that, you know, the main tool I'm going to use. So, and then kind of a funny tangent, the company we work for now, when the license for burp, which is the tool I use mainly, came up, I had like 4 or 5 guys around my desk like, hey, I'll buy that burp license for you. I'm like, what is going on? Well, the company we work for, they reimburse you. So what everybody was doing is they were throwing it on their credit card and like earning reward points, like in their personal name, and then like the company's reimbursing. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. So.
Issue number 3.
So this was a little.
There's
bit
only
of a
15
shock.
issues.
Yeah. This was a little bit of a shock to us when we first started out, right? Yeah, obviously everyone knows you're a penetration tester. You're doing something offensive for a client. I mean, you need an authorization form, right? A get out of jail free card, I like to call it, right? So the problem with that was that our authorization form began to get mauled by the clients, right? We need to know all kinds of things from you. We need to know what IP you're coming from, when you're coming from that IP, you know, how quickly you're going to run your scans, how much bandwidth you're going to have. So, and we talk about this a little bit more a little later, and actually that whole series can be another talk. But there's all kinds of things here, right, that I mean, if we're going to run a penetration test, let's make it something that adds security value. Well, I mean, if I'm giving you a form that says I'm coming from this IP address at this time, and I'm going to run, you know, these tools against you, Well, that's not really much of a penetration
Yeah,
test.
and then you know, the form was something that both the client and some of our management wanted. I think it was kind of a CYA in effect. You know, when we first signed up, we wanted to say like, well, give us like a 30-day window. Like, give us like a whole month. We won't tell you when or how or for how long or anything. And at the end of the month, then give us, you know, a couple more months to write a report, and we'll get it back to you. No, they wanted like, here's your 2-hour window to start. Needs to be done by business hours. And so, you know, those, I mean, it's something that those companies deal with, but you kind of have to, you know, fit yourself into.
Yeah, so, I mean, this gets back to, and we'll touch on this in a little bit, right? It's all about educating your client. And there's lots of good podcasts out if you've been following the community at all this year, and lots of good speakers have brought this issue up. So we'll come back to this.
Gillette makes a razor named after this one. It's called the Quattro.
Ooh, that was bad.
That was bad. We might actually make him stop. Uh-oh. He's going to disrobe.
It's going to fit. It will fit by the end of the talk.
It's spandex.
So just in case you can't see this, right, this is down in the corner is a funny little screenshot I found. There's obviously somebody searched in Google, and then we have the, you know, Google, you know, doing some keyword advertising for us, which is, in this case, I think, love, buy it new, used, and cheap on eBay. So
New in box.
So obviously, information gathering, it's a huge part of any penetration test. I mean, it's a massive part of anything that you do. It's a big part, obviously, of penetration testing. The problem is that it's really hard to explain to people who are all about the bottom line that you're spending, you know, 6 weeks doing recon on a company, because the payback is maybe a root shell, but they don't really get that, right? So you got to be careful here. It's a balancing act. You need to worry about educating people inside your organization about the value of something like this. So
I know.
So again, as I mentioned earlier, and I know there's been some great talks, and we've had a number of our clients, you know, who have asked us some pretty ridiculous stuff. If you're a penetration tester, you probably have seen this or experienced this, right? But a lot of people will say, you know what I want? I want a real penetration test.
Do me good.
Yeah, but don't hit this IP address. Don't go after this box or that service, and stay away from this range during this time, right? All right, that doesn't make any sense. But so obviously it's a bad idea. This is all about educating, which is, I think, again, something we could probably do a whole new talk on, educating your clients about how that's wrong, right?
And I think, you know, one that kind of sucks, probably the worst, is, you know, they want what they think is a pen test, but they don't want any exploitation done. So, yeah, they want like a
vulnerability scan.
They want a vulnerability scan or vulnerability assessment. You know, they don't want like the biggest, nastiest thing we can do on the web is a pop-up window with a, you know, stored cross-site script or something, and then you try to explain to them why that's bad, and they're like, well, it's just a pop-up window, right? I mean, things that people were talking about 5 or 6 years ago, and they're like, well, and you're like, well, no, that's proof of concept that we could inject arbitrary, you know, commands, and they got nothing.
Yeah.
So.
We might have to get rid of him. All right, so this is one I found very early in my career, especially when I was first starting out. You know, I used to get an IP list. It literally was a form that I would get signed by a company with an IP. You know, they'd scratch something on and fax it back to me, and then I would type it into my pen testing box, and then, you know, I'd scan them and run all those tools, and every time I would scan them, I would retype the